Welcome to the Ex Good Girl podcast, the place where people pleasers, perfectionists, and overgivers come to unlearn the good girl rules that you thought were making you good, but now you can see are actually just keeping you small. If you've spent your life being unable to say no, putting everyone else's needs and feelings above your own, constantly seeking external approval, or avoiding conflict to make others feel comfortable, if guilt and resentment feel like a constant weight in your life, it is time to learn to knock that shit off. Every episode, we dive into the stories, skills, and strategies that you need to stop shrinking, start speaking up, and to live a life that is authentically and unapologetically yours, while also deepening the connection and vulnerability in the relationships that matter to you. I'm glad you're here. Let's jump in. So because people pleasing plays out in relationships, I tend to pay a lot of attention to the things that make people pleasing harder in relationships and people pleasing better in relationships. And what I wanted to do today is a short-ish episode about 10 things that I have observed will make any relationship better. Really, truly any relationship, whether it's with a neighbor, a boss, a coworker, a son, a daughter, a sister, a brother, mom, dad, husband, wife, partner, friend. We are always looking in the relationships that we have for safety, for belonging, for dignity, for connection, to know that we matter. And that's how we're designed. And that's what brings up our people pleasing and perfectionism for a lot of us, is that we are trading those pleasing behaviors to get love. And it has a lot more to do with how we were raised and how we were taught that we would be given love and connection and safety and belonging. But I think these 10 things, no matter where you are in the journey to understand yourself better, to understand why you people please, to understand why you perfectionate, these things will help. So as I go through them, just pick one, right? This is not meant to be like the next 10 things that you have to do. They will all make a difference. But what I would like you to do is not overwhelm yourself, right? We have a lot going on right now. And just picking one or two to be curious about is the perfect way to take this episode and apply it to your life. So, number one, understand your attachment style and the effect that it has on your nervous system. I'm not going to go into what the different types of attachment styles are in very broad strokes. There are secure attachment. Okay. I'm going to start that over, Grace. I'm not going to go into the details about each attachment style. There's a lot of information out there. There are some incredible people, Instagram people who are doing some really, really great work here. One of my favorite books is called Attached. Adam Levine and Rachel Heller wrote that. And so there's great information out there. In broad strokes, secure attachment means that when there is a disruption in your relationship, whether it's a fight or a misunderstanding, a secure point of view is that it's normal, that being human means that this is going to happen and that you and I are going to work through it and we're going to be better for it, that it's going to have a positive overall effect on the way we communicate, the way we feel close to each other, the way that we express ourselves to each other, that it's not like secure people are like, yay, conflict, but they understand that it has an important place in the development of vulnerability of a relationship. And so they come to it with the frame of reference of like, we're going to be able to work this out. The other box of attachment is the insecure. And there's different styles. There's anxious, there's avoidant, and then there's disorganized. So the insecure point of view is that we need to avoid this conflict because it could be the undoing of us. I have a more anxious attachment style in some relationships. I have done a lot of work to have secure attachment. And it's not one or the other. You can have different styles in different relationships. This is something we talk a lot about inside of Stop People Pleasing, the group coaching program that I offer, because it is one of the fundamental reasons why we people please. Most, if you want to talk broad strokes, most women tend to be more anxiously attached and men are more avoidant. But again, that's very broad. But if you have an insecure attachment style, you don't want to look at conflict because you feel like it's going to be the end of everything, or you're not going to know how to handle it. It's going to be overwhelming. And so the way that your nervous system, whether you tend to want to fight, take flight, fawn, which is people pleasing, FAWN, or freeze, has a lot to do with the way that you were taught to give and receive love. And that underlies your attachment style. So do some learning about it, because it's having an effect on your relationships, whether you know it or not. Number 2, this kind of goes hand in hand. It's the basis of secure attachment. Understanding that rupture and repair are normal parts of any relationship, and that the rupture part is not so much of the problem. The skills to repair are the most important. So drilling down a little bit on this idea or this belief, this worldview about conflict that underlies secure attachment, everybody is going to bump up against each other. We're gonna bump up against each other's insecurities, communication styles that are unclear or that don't quite know what to do with each other yet. That's totally normal. The most important part of any relationship are the skills to repair, the skills to come back together and say, this is how that felt for me. I'm sorry that I showed up in this way. What I am trying to say, or what I meant, or what I need. The skills to repair are the most important. My favorite person to learn about this from is actually a parenting expert. Her name is Dr. Becky Kennedy. Look her up. She has an incredible podcast. And although a lot of the point of view of her advice is, parents for children, we are all reparenting little parts of us, little inner children that we have that benefit beautifully from the expert advice that she gives. And she talks about repair so beautifully. So look up her podcast and learn from Dr. Becky Kennedy. Number 3, learn to fight better. This is an idea that, in fact, I saw kind of in doing some research for this podcast, the Gottmans, who are, famous marriage experts, wrote a book called Fight Right. I have not read it, but I love most of what they do. My idea of how to fight right, or how to fight better, is actually understanding your patterns in disagreements, your patterns when you fight. When you are not in a fight, when you are feeling calm, when you are feeling connected, get together with a person that you have a disagreement with and try to map it out. Try to do an autopsy on your last fight and see if you can recognize patterns. Is there a certain point at which it erupts? Is there a certain point when one of you stonewalls? Is there a certain point when one of you gives up or blames or tries to maneuver or manipulate? It's important to understand the patterns in your fight so that you can agree to take a break before it gets to the point where it gets worse. I'm thinking specifically about my relationship with my husband and children. In my relationship with my husband, there is always a point at which I feel very allergic to being blamed. I will do anything to avoid being blamed. And I know, like, right when I'm getting to that point, my chest gets really tight. I start to feel anger rising. And so I need to take a break before that point, because oftentimes, I know it's hard to believe, things are my fault, or what it means is that it's something that I have contributed to the situation. And so if I can take a break right before I get that tight, hot feeling where I am reacting to being blamed or to him bringing something up that I need to work on or that he wants me to work on, we will do so much better. And a break for us looks like, hey, we're getting to that point where I'm getting hot. I need to take a break. And because I understand my anxious attachment style, what I have learned to do is take care of myself and say, it's going to be okay. Because the anxious voice in my head says, all right, this is the fight where everything's over. This is the fight where we get, and to be clear, it used to say that a lot. Now, because I have worked a lot on this particular dynamic in our marriage, I'm able to take a break without feeling abandoned. I'm able to take a break without feeling that stinging terror of like him leaving me, even if it's in the fight. So that's why number one is so important. It's so that when you're doing number three and learning to fight better by mapping out and really understanding your patterns, you can speak to yourself in a way that is comforting and helpful to take a break or to have some kind of everybody back to their corners to cool off so that you can work on the actual issue and not just get caught up in all of the feelings around it. Now, the feelings are important, but when feelings are really, 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 really heightened, again, when you're in like that nervous system reaction of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, your nervous system needs a chance to come back to a regulated place so that you can actually work on the thing that needs to be worked on rather than just spin in the nervous system reaction and in the emotions. So number three, learning to fight better by paying attention to the patterns so that you know when to take a break. Number four, this was a big one for me. Understand the distinction between fault and responsibility. As previously mentioned, because of my experiences, I sometimes have a really difficult reaction to being at fault for something. I've had to work really hard or really tenderly actually on helping my little inner child understand that if I've done something wrong that I need to apologize for, it doesn't mean I'm bad. It doesn't mean that there is something wrong with me. And so I've learned to accept fault in a different way. I am not perfect at it. And if my husband is listening to this, honey, I'm working on it still. Yes, I love you. And one of the biggest things to help me was to understand that fault means that I have introduced something into the relationship that is hurtful, right? And I need to own up to that. But responsibility means no matter whose fault it is, we have the responsibility in relationships to co-create the type of environment where we can talk about things, or to create the type of experience where both of us feel connected and safe and valued. That just because maybe something is the fault of my husband or my child, I still have an opportunity to show up in a way that creates a space where we can talk about it in a way that will more than likely lead to its resolution. So even if nothing is my fault, I still have an opportunity to help create a loving, connected, responsive way of us working through things. This comes up a lot for women when they are working on an unhealthy dynamic in relationships, and it is the other person's fault, like a boss who consistently overschedules your time. That's not your fault, but you do have an opportunity or a responsibility in that dynamic to create the type of communication, the type of space where you can talk about it. And Something doesn't have to be your fault for you still to have an opportunity or a responsibility to resolve it. Number 5, spend time apart. Now, this is specific for romantic relationships. People pleasers tend to dump a lot of time and energy and effort into pleasing, obviously, duh. And sometimes that looks like, what do you want to do? How do you want to spend our time? Where do you want to go? What do you want to eat? And there is a loss of identity. One of the things that women say most often when I am speaking with them in a call about joining Stop People Pleasing or becoming a private client is, I don't even know who I am. I don't even know what I like. I don't even know what I would do with an afternoon or a week all to myself, because they have spent so much time and energy pouring into others that they don't even know what fills them, what renews them, what feels good to them. And so spending time developing your own interests and hobbies, creating outside friendships, outside of your primary romantic relationships, outside of even sibling relationships, relationships with your children, relationships where you can be seen in different ways. I have some friendships that are really important to me, and those friends see different parts of me and encourage different parts of me in a way that is really, really beautiful. I have been married to my husband now for going to be 26 years. And although he knows me the best, there are parts of me that he doesn't see or recognize, not because he doesn't want to, just because we have patterns and our ways of relating to each other. And so as I discover more parts of myself outside of him and outside of what I do with my children or outside of just what I do for my job, I can bring that back to my relationship with him to share, to invite him into this hobby or interest with me, or to do it on my own, to develop it and to become more aware of who I am, what I like, what fills me, what feels good to me, because that is such an essential part of having fulfilling, connected relationships. Number 6, learn to ask directly for what you want and need. This is a skill we work on relentlessly inside of Stop People Pleasing, because when women communicate, if you can imagine a scale, in fact, I did a whole episode on this called Say What You Want to Say. I'll link to it in the notes. Great. Women tend to start their communication. If you can imagine a scale that goes from 1 to 10, and on the 1 side, it's very nice and sweet and accommodating and apologetic and nurturing and reassuring. And over on the 10 scale, we tend to think it's like bitchy and bossy and mean and rude, but it's actually just very, very direct and clear. Most women start closer to 1, especially when they're asking for what they want and need. They apologize for it in advance. They try to give a lot of context or reasons for it, and it muddies up communication in a way that makes it harder to be satisfied. So try this sentence. I've been thinking about our relationship, and I'd really like to talk about blank, or I'd really like more of blank, and try out more direct communicating about what you want and need. If you typically start on the 1 end of the scale, try starting from 5, or better yet, like I walk you through in that podcast episode, start at 10 out of 10 and back it off. Because what you want to do is make sure that what you want and need is not being muddied or hidden in all of the apologizing and accommodating and reassuring that women are taught to do in the way we communicate. So learn to ask directly for what you want and need. Number 7, do more of what is already working. And you don't even have to guess, you can just ask. Here are some of my favorite questions to learn from your partner, from your sister, from your child, from your boss. well, maybe not your boss, but from your close friendships. What is working in your relationship so you can do more of it? Question number 1, when did you feel the most loved by me this year? For your boss, you can ask, when did you feel most supported? When did you feel like I was doing the best job, right? You can adapt these. But question number 1, when did you feel the most loved by me this year? Number 2, what's one thing that we've learned to appreciate more about each other this year? Do more of that. Number 3, how did we support each other's goals? And where can we do more of that this year? Question number 4, what's one thing you'd like to see more of in our relationship this year? It's one of my favorite questions to ask because usually what I get is like a smile and a reaction that they are pleased that I'm interested, whether it's a friend or my child or a sister or my mom or my dad. All of these questions help you do more of what is already working. Number 8, pay attention to your pleasing hotspots where resentment and self-abandonment really happen for you, and learn to talk about them. We tend to have either some blind spots that we're completely unaware of. Those you need to join Stop People Pleasing so I can help you see those. But if you already know where some of your hotspots are, imagine just wrapping those in some love and some tenderness and letting yourself study those moments instead of just giving in to people pleasing. Paying attention and growing your awareness is the first step to be able to do something different. And it's the most important step to be able to know what you need. So, number 8, paying attention to those people-pleasing hotspots is going to make a big difference. Number 9, this is a big one. Get clear on what a boundary is and is not, and what an expectation is, and how they're different from preferences. So I did an entire podcast episode. In fact, I did 2, one by myself and one with Olivia Vizacaro. I'll link to those in the show notes. This is really important. It's a place of common misunderstanding, the difference between boundaries, expectations, and preferences. And once you know the difference, you'll be better able to ask for what you want and need with the words to communicate what you really mean. And number 10, make sure that you are treating you the way you want to be treated and taking care of yourself in the very best, most loving, tender ways that you know how. If I could just pick one for you, it would be this one, because it kind of encompasses all of these things. It's working on secure attachment with yourself. It is being tender and kind and loving with yourself. It is spending time nurturing and caring for yourself in ways that really renew you and fill your cup. It is developing a way of speaking to yourself that is loving and gracious and tender. And when you do that, you have more of that loving, gracious tenderness for other people in your life. All relationships, no matter who it is. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week. Hey, thanks for listening. If this podcast has been helpful to you, I would really appreciate it if you would give me a 5-star rating in whatever platform you listen to your podcast. And if you go to my website, sarahfisk.coach, you can sign up there to receive my emails. Right now, I'm taking private one-to-one clients who want my help speeding up this work in their own lives. I really hope to provide a lot of free information on my website and in my podcast for people to do this work on their own. But if you're interested in having a coach like me to help you implement these things faster, to find the blind spots and obstacles that you're not aware of, go to my website and sign up for a consult. That's a time when you and I can get on Zoom and talk about the particulars of your situation, and I can show you how I could be helpful. The second thing you can do on my website is sign up for a freebie that I have called Difficult Conversations. Having a conversation that seems like it's going to be hard or difficult is one of the things that people pleasers struggle with. And so I've created a whole guide for you to be able to do that with some more confidence. That will also get you signed up for information about my group program, Stop People Pleasing. It's a group coaching program where you join a community of women just like you who are struggling to overcome perfectionating and people pleasing, and we do it together in a group. It's a really amazing opportunity to not just learn from your own experience, but just to see how similar you are to so many other women out there. The healing and the challenging and the laughing and the growth that happens in that beautiful community of women is really amazing. And if it's interesting to you, I would love for you to know about it.